contact information at cauldronscrypt.com. But we can discuss that. The last one there on the list, communication. I cannot say it enough. 100% open and honest communication is the only way that a DS relationship has a chance of working. And if vanilla relationships would take more from that and people not be so emotionally charged when it comes to discussing things, there would probably be fewer divorces. Or the divorces that happen would be like, oh, hey, we've been together for 40 years. I'm kind of tired of you. You're kind of tired of me. But still, we're best friends. Let's just get divorced and stay friends. Oh, okay. And I kind of say that jokingly, but at the same time, I really mean it, because if people are mature about things and they talk about things, then it's not a problem, because they're open and they know what's going on. I heard in a movie one time, and I cannot remember what it was. I think it was some like rom-com or something that I was watching with a former girlfriend, or it may have been my wife. But there was, I remember what it was. It was the movie Cocktail with Tom Cruise. I just thought of Interview with a Vampire, and Tom Cruise come into mind. But he and Elizabeth Shue, I think it is, are yelling back and forth about their relationship being over. And he says, come on, this doesn't have to end this way. And she says, yes, it does. If it doesn't end badly, then it doesn't end, or something to that effect. And I remember I was a teenager when that movie came out, and I remember hearing that line and thinking just how stupid that sounded to me, because I'd already been through it at that point, and it seemed to be a true statement. But I thought, why does it have to be that way? If people were open and honest about things, they talked about things more, then it didn't have to be that way. Things can end, and end on a good note, through honesty and communication, and not after the fact. That's, the whole thing of it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission is certainly not true. Keep that in mind in not only DS relationships, but in those vanilla relationships as well, whether it's a friendship, a business relationship. Of course, both people have to be on board with that. So the dominance role, to run through these again: respect, leadership, and responsibility. And of course, responsibility has its 4 parts: self-improvement, submissive's improvement, safety, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual safety, and then communication. So there you have it. Now, getting into the common mistakes, the number one most common mistake that I see coming from a dominant standpoint, and I've done this myself, and it backfires 100% of the time, is dominance versus domineering. There is a massive difference between being a dominant, being confident in who you are, being a good leader. Notice it's confident, not arrogant or cocky, not getting your feathers ruffled every time someone says something that could possibly be taken as emasculating or defeminizing. That's not confidence. You have to be able to take those statements from people. True confidence is just letting these things flow on. So what is domineering? That is that micromanaging. Remember, I said last week, getting into micromanaging, I believe it was last week, is not something that you can do. Oh, you had your foot at a 96 degree angle when it was supposed to be at a 90 degree angle. You didn't call me at exactly 12 o'clock. It was 12:00.15. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but that is domineering. Now, if a submissive is supposed to call me at 12 and it's 12:01, 12:02, 12:15, I'm not hearing from them, that's going to be an issue. There needs to be a reason. There will be a consequence. And that is strict, yes, but given certain circumstances, that is okay, if that's one of the things that's being worked on. And some people may be listening to this and just be blown away by what I'm saying, because I'm saying that in some cases being that strict is okay. In other cases, it's not. You're like, well, isn't there one recipe for how a dom treats a sub? No, there is not. Every sub is different, and you have to treat them all differently. A poor dom treats every sub the same and expects them to fall in line with his brand or her brand if it's a mistress or a dome. And that's just not healthy as far as a true DS relationship. And remember, I'm talking about DS relationships in a 24/7 or a collar-on situation. And a collar-on is exactly what it sounds like. If it's someone who you are their dom or dome, and it's not a 24/7 setting, you don't have that control while they're at work or certain times whenever it may be. Say if you're only dominant over them on the weekends, then on the weekends they would be considered collar on, and that is when they are referring to you as sir or ma'am or master or mistress, whatever the case may be. So there are those types of relationships too, and this applies to that as well. And again, this isn't applying to going out to an event and having a scene with someone or a session with someone. That dominance versus domineering, do as I say, not as I do, that's domineering. If you think about high school relationships and the jealous ones and how the person who is jealous acts toward the other one, that's domineering, and that is not healthy in any setting. And if you're having a problem with that, or if you're a sub and your dom is having problems with that, then it needs to be a conversation. It needs to be brought to the open, discussed before it blows up in your face. And I promise you, 100% of the time, it's going to blow up in your face. There's no way around it. Just like those high school relationships did. That's why you're not still with that person that was so insanely jealous and become a stalker. Or maybe that was you. Maybe you were the one that was insanely jealous and become a stalker. Proper mental state to scene, that is so incredibly important when it comes to safety. If your head's not in it, don't do it. I don't know the exact number of times of how many events I have called a safe word and ended a scene as the dominant versus how many times a submissive has. But probably I've ended scenes more than my submissives have, because I used to have a really bad temper, and I would catch myself going into that headspace where my temper was going to flare, where I was starting to enjoy just inflicting pain and thinking of other people and not thinking about the submissive. And if you do that, then you know what? You're about to abuse someone. Stop it immediately. Just safe word right out of the scene. Red. Or whatever word you use. Rutabaga. Who knows? It is crucial for the safety of all involved that you not continue with that. Continuing on with our common mistakes, the last one, and I would guess if you think about it, you'll know what it is. Communication breakdown. Not maintaining check-ins. There are two types of check-ins. There is a post-scene check-in where you go from your scene, you're in dom space, they're in subspace, and you get into your routine of coming down from that, and then you go into a check-in. And it's absolutely crucial because I need that feedback. Why do I need it? Is it to make myself feel good, or to know that, I did everything in that scene just the way she wanted, or I provided her with the perfect pleasure and I'm just a manly man? No. All that has to go away as a dom. That's not at all what it's about. What I want to know is there anything that I could have done differently to make it more enjoyable? And she wants to know, is there anything that she could have done to make that scene more enjoyable for me? Did I go too far with anything? And just really break it down. And sometimes it's really, really quick. I've had check-ins that were pretty much nothing more than looks. Like, okay, you ready to check in? And it's just like, okay. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Okay. Well, and when that takes place, that's not a check-in. Even though I just said I've had check-ins that were pretty much just looks of obvious satisfaction with how the scene went. When that takes place, you have to. It's the dom or the dome's role to go back to it. What has taken place in that setting is that you're not yet out of subspace and you're not yet out of dom space. So you're still very euphoric from what has just occurred, and you're not there yet. So when you are there, you have to realize, you know what, we didn't properly check in. And we have to do this, regardless of how obvious it may have been. When you make those assumptions, it's really a snowball effect. The first time you make that assumption is going to lead to a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth and so on and so on and so on. And before you're assuming everything about the relationship and you're not talking about anything. And that's when it's going to blow up in your face. So, fine, go on to bed that night. But while you're sitting there having your morning coffee, bring it back up. It's your job as a dom to say, hey, you've done your morning routine, if this is a 24/7 or a collar-on submissive, and you've had your morning routine, whatever that may be, whether it's, your collar ritual and the coffee presentation and bowing down, whatever it may be. After that, say, we did not check in last night, so let's sit down in the floor. I say that a lot because that's my style, because that's where they kneel to me. So that's what puts a submissive beneath me, and I make sure that I go down to their level on the floor with them as a sign of respect to the submissive. And that's where we are equals, and then we can talk about it. Without fail, every single time that has taken place, they have said thank you for recognizing that we were both in our spaces and still too euphoric to check in. Thank you for not passing up on our communication, or some variation of that. But that's the basis of what they're saying every single time. So it's so important that you get that communication in and that you maintain those check-ins. Now, I said that there are two types of check-ins. That is the first one. And those types of check-ins you have also in BDSM, in scene players, conventions or parties, whether it's at a club or a private party. You have your initial scene, and then you go into aftercare, and then you go into check-in. So it's the same either way, whether you're talking about DS or the stereotypical BDSM type of interaction. That's the first type of check-in. The second type is a scheduled check-in that I like to have. And again, treat every submissive differently, but there are some things that I demand out of all of them, and it's just a couple of things, and that is one of them. Another is not yelling at me for obvious reasons, because that's just a sign of immaturity. So anyway, the other type of check-in that I maintain and that should be maintained is a weekly check-in with a 24/7 submissive, making sure that you're just scheduled to say, okay, during these other check-ins, we talking about the scene. Now let's talk about us. And there can be requested check-ins that are not scheduled. If the submissive is doing something consistently that I've realized, you know what, I need to go ahead and address this now, or if I'm doing something, the submissive needs the permission to call for a check-in, period. That's something that needs